Good evening. Welcome to Above Ground Leadership Podcast, episode 2. You joining myself and Ashley. We're here to take on another week's journey of conversation, talk about life and all various topics. Today, we're going to dig into a topic that was one of my motivational or my daily posts. I'm going to read it. Today, I posted that which causes us trials shall yield us triumph, and that which make our hearts ache shall fill us with gladness. The only true happiness is to learn, to advance, and improve, which could not happen unless we commence with error, ignorance, and imperfection. We must pass through the darkness to reach the light. This is to learn, to advance, and improve, which could not happen unless we commence with error, ignorance, and imperfection. We must pass through the darkness to reach the light. So when I hear that, one of the first things that come to mind for me is we are a sum total, right? We as a people, right? We are a sum total of our experiences, right? We the things you go through are the things that you amount to. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have success without error, right? Doesn't mean that. But those who have error and that are still successful and are successful are more balanced. They really have a feel of what's wrong, right? So what you think about that, Ashley?
What's up, guys? Happy 2 weeks.
Right.
We're starting off the second week. So I have a couple of things. What's so crazy is I've seen some stuff throughout the day that just kind of like, connect to what you're saying. And it was like little things that didn't mean anything at the time, but as we're breaking down this statement, one of the things I saw was building a business will teach you more than getting a degree in business, for example, or like starting a business will get you more than, getting a degree in business. So that's the way I internalize what you're saying. Like, trial and error will really get you there. The other part is that, I was listening to this clip that Steve Harvey he was talking over the clip, and it was like a speech that he gave. And he said, your growth happens in your failure, because you don't really learn anything from success, because if you do it and you succeed, you don't really learn anything. But it's like, in the clip was this guy, he was trying to like master this trick on this like beam. And so it kept showing him attempting the trick and falling. He attempted it again, he hit his arm, he attempted it again and he fell on his face, and he attempted. But every time he was failing at a different point in the trick. So he had mastered each part of the trick, so that, he was perfecting little pieces at a time to actually perfect the entire trick. So it was like, so that's kind of what I think about when you are breaking down that statement, that like you actually, you get more from kind of falling on the face, as weird as that sounds.
That no. That's right on. And I always said, said this, when you're talking about your growth, right, and going to your point of Steve Harvey, because I've actually used, that analogy. When we win, you don't dig down. You just try to win again, right? Mm-hmm. When you win, you don't go back and say, okay, let me see why I won, right? Normally, when you win, you just, when the next match come up, whatever, or the next opponent come up, or the next adventure come up, you just trying to win again. But when you lose, right? When you take that L, you're like, okay, how did I get here? Right. Why did I lose? What did I do wrong? What did they do better? What happened? And you just dig and you turn over every stone and you try to figure it out. Like, okay, how do I not get here again?
Yeah. What's crazy? Like, you just said that, and it made me think of a time, because my life has been taking me into some really amazing rooms, and I find myself in successful situations and asking myself, like, how did I get here? Like, I gave the universe the challenge of like getting me in the room, and now I'm in the room, and it's like, how did I get here? So I think you can apply the same logic, to failure and success. Like, you still have to ask the questions of like, what do I need to continue to do, and then what do I need to fix? Because every failure doesn't mean you failed every point. Like, it could be like you just, you passed the class, but you failed 3 tests. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's failure. You can learn from failure and success, I think. But just, answering your question about what I think the statement means, I think it's more about, what you take away from failure.
No, I think you're right on, because so a lot of people, and okay, so let's get to society, right?
Yeah,
So
let's talk about them.
let's talk about this. So I'm a big non-believer in the everybody gets a trophy, right?
You don't think there should be an 11th place ribbon?
Right. No, because when I was in kindergarten, it was red, blue. No, red, yellow, and green, right? Something like that. And
Right.
you knew when you won and you knew when you lost, right?
Right.
But I think in the big picture, it takes away the value of losing. It makes losing, everybody gets a trophy, makes losing look bad. Losing, now, don't get me wrong, I hate to lose. You know that. I hate to lose.
I do know that.
I
Same.
hate to lose.
Same.
But I know it's a value in losing. Because again, what we just said, what we just talked about, when I lose, I'm looking for why I lost.
Mm-hmm.
But when you coat that with a trophy, now I done took some of the edge off of losing.
Mm.
You know what
True.
I mean? Now losing is like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get that anyway.
It was just a part of it. Right.
Right? I ain't got to go to practice. I'm going to play anyway. Right? So as we go through this, we have to be careful, because, you're teaching little Johnny at 6 that, you're going to get a trophy anyway in basketball, but at 16 or 26 or 36, now we're talking about life. And you just took an L, little Johnny, right? So now what? And you don't know how to react to it, because all your life it's been catered to you just getting a pass because everybody wins. And in life,
I see, and I hear you. I just disagree at some point. So, the reason why I say that is because you have to acknowledge kids where they are. And I agree that how you handle a 6-year-old in failure is very different than how you handle a 26-year-old in failure. But you have to acknowledge where kids are. I think, especially now in a time in the world that we live in, mental health is more prevalent than anything else in the world. And I think, when I was younger, probably, this wasn't even a thing, when you were younger, but when I was younger, the conversation about mental health and ADHD and ADD and all this stuff really started to come out, because we started to have the literature. The parents had a little bit more time to invest in their kids. They had the monetary means to kind of invest in while their kids were acting up in school, for example. So, we start unpacking all of these things. These kids start acting out because they're not getting attention. They're not getting support. They're not getting the things that they need. So it starts causing like behavioral issues. But if you reward someone for effort, depending on where they are developmentally, rewarding someone for effort really creates someone's urge to want to, give more effort. So like, for example, my job pays me a certain amount. So whatever they pay me is what they're going to get from me. Now, if they give me a bonus or they give me some type of incentive program, the likelihood of me working harder goes up. You know what I'm saying? So, I look at it the same way. So 11th place is a bit of a stretch, but I do think that like we need to acknowledge people's effort regardless, because if they do it and they fail and you say, hey, you lost, like you fail, and it's like all of the work that I did put into it like means nothing.
No, well, that's okay. That's a great point. But that's not what I'm saying. I guess
Okay.
what I'm saying is we can't take the value of a loss away, right? And so
So are you saying more like
losing,
the
hold on,
experience? You can. Okay.
losing isn't fatal. Losing is part of the process. Like there's no divide. You can't say, okay, I want to be successful, but I don't never want to lose.
Yeah,
Right.
I get you.
And so what I'm saying is at a young age, right? I was in the kindergarten. I can remember that Long Branch elementary, or not elementary, Long Branch school.
Shout out.
It was in kindergarten that I identified that when we did field day, it was only 3 ribbons. All these classes, but it was 3 ribbons.
Yeah.
And the winners got a ribbon. And what it does is it makes me say, okay, man, this kid was faster than me. Like, what do I have to do to be that fast? Right? Not that he's better than me, but we got next to each other and we ran 20 yards and he got there before I did. Right? So I don't want to take away the point of being able to compete and learning that, okay, I didn't do good enough. It ain't the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you have a lot of people, younger generations now get nicked. A nick in life takes them out because they never ran through a thunderbolt. They haven't had a thunderbolt in their life, right? Because it's crushing to lose at 5, 6, 7 years old. But it's part of life. Like you're not going to win all the time. And I believe when we do this, I believe you're missing out on a very, very good opportunity to show a child that, hey, it's okay to lose. You didn't win this one, right? You're not going to win them all, right? Just like as you become a parent, you say, you can't get that candy. You can't get candy every time you come to the store. You can't get a toy every time you come to the store.
Right.
But what you're doing, you're instilling something. You're instilling a sense of, okay, next play. Okay, move on. I didn't win this. And that's kind of what I'm saying. I do believe mental health is real, right? But I'll say this, and I'm gonna go to you. I'm gonna say this. Do you know, all right, in the 5th grade, hold your fingers up when I do this. In the 5th grade, I went to Lowland Culver. In the 6th grade, I went to Long Branch. In the 7th grade, I went to Matthew W. Gilbert. In the 8th grade, I went to Kirby Smith. No, I went to James DuPont. Yep. In the 9th grade, I went to Kirby Smith. In the 10th grade, I went to Andrew Jackson. That's 6 schools in 6 years. All right. So you can relax. So with that being said, today, if a kid went to 6 schools in 6 years, like, oh, yeah, he got a reason not to be successful. Right? Like he done moved all these places. He done went to it was unstable for him. Right? And the crazy part about it, actually, we didn't move. Your grandma, we didn't move. Our address didn't change once. Right? But I just went to all these different schools because that's just what it was. Right? And I believe I believe as in my childhood, it was things that we were able to deal with, right? Just because I had to deal with it. There was no choice into it. Like there was no, house fires at 5, house fires in 10th grade, burglary in the house. It was just things that we dealt with because that was just the cards you was dealt with. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then going back to these childhood, again, I was a kid. We didn't get trophies for everything. You got a trophy if you won. If you did well, you got a trophy. Right? Yeah. If you didn't, you got a pat on the back. Hey, thanks for competing, but you didn't get a trophy. And it's a small thing, but I just believe it really sets a tone in a child's thinking pattern and their behavior as we start moving forward in our life. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so you're gonna count for me now?
I'm a count. Hey, whatever you want me to do.
You want to count for me now? Because I definitely think that we share in that experience because
But all
I'm a
right. So,
military brat.
wait.
So
All right, there you go. Because the
yeah,
difference is you're a military brat.
so but I mean the experience is the same.
It
You're like
is, no question. No question.
yeah, so it's just like it's so funny. I went to this thing on Sunday and I went to pay and I have my USAA card and the lady was like, "Oh, were you in the military?" And I was like, "No, my dad was." And I was like, "Yeah, I was a military brat." And I was like, "I got separation anxiety like a mug." It was a joke, but it was like, that was something I had to work through with my
Right.
therapist because I was literally just like always a new kid, always having to pick up to move, always losing things, and it wasn't like, oh, you moved down the street or you moved to the other side of the city or
Right.
something like that. It was like
Oh,
major moves, a
move.
lot. Yeah.
Move.
And then, right. And then, my parents were all over the place because they had to go for work. And, you never realize how much your kids sacrificed with
Oh, no
you,
question.
like it was definitely like it was a the whole family made
No
sacrifices to
question.
have access to the things that we had access to. But that's that. But yeah, I think I went to like 6 middle schools. um, and I mean, I don't even remember all the names of them. I think it was like Nelson Golden, 6th grade, Lewis Palmer, 7th grade, Midway Middle School for half the year for 8th grade. Then we
Midway.
moved back. Yeah, then we went back to we came back to Colorado. So I did no, that's a lie. I did half the year of 7th grade at Lewis Palmer, and I played basketball, and I was on a step team. So like all of those connections I made, I lost because I
Wait,
went
and
to
I don't
another school.
think your middle school was it
But then I
Midway?
came to no, I did go to Midway. I went to Midway, I think, for like the second half of 7th grade, I want to say, because we had moved on Fort Stewart at the time. And so I had to go to a different middle school.
Was it
And
Hinesville
so
Middle or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we you ended up getting stationed back in Colorado. So I went to a middle school in Colorado, which was like Emerson for like half of 8th grade. Then the other half of 8th grade, I went to Carson Middle School. So yeah, that was 5. And just kind of making connections and losing people. I think that's why I am as well versed as I am
So
now
great. I'm
as
glad
a
you said that
person.
because
But
that's what I was going to ask you. That's what I was going to ask you. So
yeah,
we know that the difficulties that come with the changing and the moving and just the
but
just.
it's sad though because I'm kind of like used to instability in a
But
really
so
twisted way.
Answer this. What are the positives that come from that? And you said it. You've already hit on it. It's almost like we're chameleons. You put out, and I say this to people. You put me in a boardroom with white collars, I'm gonna perform. You drop me off in the hood, I'm gonna perform, right?
Same.
You put me in with blue collars, tell me to go put my gloves on, go to work, I'm gonna perform, right?
Same.
And that is one thing that I really take for my children, that yes, we've moved. We done got up, we done picked up, but guess what? We ain't got no choice. We gotta move, we gotta go, right?
Right.
You're gonna meet new friends, right? You're gonna meet new friends, right?
Right. Yeah, it was
Your
hard
sister
though.
gonna do this right now. It is, and I do recognize that. But while it's hard, it's the reality.
True.
Right? It's the reality. Kind of going back to what we were just talking about, the winning and losing. At the end of somebody got to win, somebody got to lose. And we got to move. Right? We got to move. And as we move, as you become an adult, as you go to pick up and go to a new job, or pick up and move to a new place, you don't have this, it doesn't shock your body as an adult because you're like, okay, I did this in the 4th grade, in the 5th grade, the 6th grade. I did these things. And that's where I believe. So my question is, again, to you is, what positives as an adult do you feel you have gained from just that attrition of moving?
I think you nailed it. I think that I can exist in any environment and very well, very, very well. I was just talking briefly about like being in a room that I never thought I'd be in. I got invited to have, I talked to you about this before I
Mhm.
went. I got invited to, meet one of the mayors of a neighboring city of Denver. And it was just me and him. He was just like, "Hey, you want to go grab coffee?" And I was like, how did I get here? And I was able to sit across this man who's like completely in a different bracket as me and have a whole conversation about me. And he's like trying to convince me to run for office and these different things. I was like, "Sir, no, ma'am." Like, no, like,
Right,
and
right.
and we were talking about some of the issues that he's facing in his community. He was like, "What do you think?" And he let me sit at the table and kind of brainstorm with him. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm just like, how did I get
Where am
here?
I at? Right. Like
Right.
what?
But then I can literally like fly down to Jacksonville and like hang out, like hang out in downtown Jacksonville. I had like no issues, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? So it's like, it makes me pretty well versed in a lot of different areas. But I do feel like I went through this period also where I felt like too black for white people and too white for black people. So I went through this period where I was trying to navigate that. And my response back from the universe was like, "Be more you." Like, and that was like, what does that
End of the-
mean? But it was just like, lean more into who you are instead of like worrying about the boxes that you do or do not fit into. So
and that's a good transition because that's really good.
yeah.
I always I remember in 2012, man, that's been 10 years. In 2012,
Jesus.
I know, right? I went through this training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and the sergeant major in the training was talking about how he would show up when he wore this hat at work and wore another hat at home, right?
I think you told me this story.
Yeah. And
I watched you talk about it.
so as he got ready to go to work, got ready to go to work, kiss his wife, kiss his kids, get in his car, he in this great mood, he ride. But as soon as he pulled up to work, he put his hat on, he got out, he was stone faced, really didn't speak to many people, just all business, got into work, right? Until one day, he finally said, you know what, when he pulled up to the work, he getting ready to go into a meeting, and he walked in and he spoke to everyone, right? "Hey, how you doing this morning? Hey, how you doing?" And everybody looked like, "Oh, what's going on?"
Yeah.
And I say all that to say his point was it was so draining wearing two hats, right? And as you just said, and I always tell people this about me. If you see me out with my family, if you see me on a basketball court, if you see me in the office, if you see me anywhere, I'm the same person, right?
Mm.
Because that takes less energy. I'm really good at being me, right? And when you really dial into that, your environment really doesn't matter. Now,
Yeah.
now, with that being said, you do respect your situation. Whatever situation you're in, you got to respect it, right? You got to own
True.
up. Okay, I'm here. I got to do that. I got to understand where
Right.
I'm surrounded.
Yeah.
I got to know what's going on. But
Right.
doesn't change the person. And I see a lot of times, a lot of people get caught up into trying to be something that they're not. And at the end of the day, it really gets you in trouble,
Yes,
right? It really
it
gets you in
does.
trouble.
It does. I think that's where my challenge is,
Mhm.
in the part of my journey that I'm at. It's like, I get constant reminders of like, are you being the most you? Are you being the best version of yourself? And I feel it like energy pressure, like, the universe is like, you got to be more you. And when I am that, I get instant like validation, like when I'm more me. And I notice it now. So like I'll walk in a space and I'll say like, "Oh, I'm feeling ugly," or I don't like my hair or something. And a random person will come up to me, "Oh my God, your hair looks amazing." Or, "Oh, you look so cute." Or, "Oh," like all these different things. So like when I'm second guessing myself and I will feel something in me say, "Hey, like tap in. Are you being you?" And when I do tap in and I become me, I get instant like, positive validation for being me. So when I lean in just a little bit, I get everything that I need to just kind of take me right where I need to be.
Right, right.
And then once I'm me, I'm very present. I'm very aware. I
Dialed
get
in.
to enjoy. Yes, I get to enjoy the space and the environment that I'm in. But it's just hard to do that initial like check in of like being myself because I just insecurities have they weigh on you,
Of
and
course.
we all have a purpose and we're all trying to figure out what that is. But while you're trying to figure out your perfected purpose, there's a lot of imperfections that come with it, and they eat at you and they
Right.
make you think less of yourself, and sometimes those voices are louder, and you have to you kind of have to be louder than them, and it's a challenge. But that's where I'm at in my journey. I'm not saying that I'm better
Right.
than anyone,
Right.
but that is just kind of like what I'm navigating. But I am noticing that I'm getting better at being myself, and so I've started to attract the energy that I want, and I'm allowed to be in environments that I've always been in, but my perspective is different. Like I've always been the black anything in a lot of spaces. I've gotten to points where I've been so uncomfortable that I quit jobs because I was so uncomfortable. But it was because I didn't know how to be myself. So
So let me ask you this. So you use perspective and in your perspective, all right, I'm gonna say this statement. Tell me what you think about it. Your perspective is really, really based on your position. So because we both can be looking at the same thing, right? But our positions are different. You're looking at from your perspective, you're looking from here, looking up, and I might be looking here, looking down. We
right, you
see
are
this.
taller than me. You are taller than me.
We see the same exact thing, but your position, right, it's what your perspective is based off of, right? And so a lot of times people want to, get so opinionated on things that they don't really step back and say, well, from this group or from this side of the story, they see it as this because they can't see the third and fourth order effect, right? The third and fourth order effect doesn't exist to the person who's just trying to live today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right. Right.
true.
So, again, going back to like what we talked about last week, like we're talking about gas prices and how it's going to change and why the crude oil is up and why they don't care about that. Like that doesn't, they just need to know they got to get to work
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. Right.
Right.
And the next day they got to get to
Right.
work. So perspective is really important. What you think about that?
Oh, I think perspective is everything. If it's literally all that you need, it'll take the stress off of any situation. Also, I think that it's when you think about perspective, you also have to think about what you're putting into you.
Right.
So, like having the right leaders, having the right content, like being around the right people. You know, I find that I'm more sane when I read on a consistent basis
Mhm.
because, and I like autobiographies because it's literally somebody else's experience. They're just talking about how
Their
they
story.
navigated life.
Mhm.
Yeah. And and I read like Rick Ross's book I'm working through right
I
now.
was going to ask you
And
what are you
because
reading now?
Rick Ross's book. I also got Will Smith's book. Right after that, I got that Extreme Ownership book that I haven't cracked open yet.
You're
But
gonna
yeah,
like that
and
one.
I know I will. I went to get an oil change maybe about a month ago, and a girl was sitting in there reading it, and I was like, man, I need to read that book. So I bought it. I own it. I just haven't like been able to crack it open yet. But
Okay.
the last autobiography I read was about the fashion designer. I can't think of his name. Dapper Dan, and he was a designer. He grew up in the 50s when like heroin was crazy, and like it was just eating up communities. Like he watched the African American community literally like dismantle throughout his lifetime, and so he talked about overcoming that. He talked about finding his purpose, Like finding his purpose wasn't even the hardest part. Like most people just like, oh, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to do in this world. He's like, I found out everything else was hard. So, just reading that, and that was my takeaway. I mean, he talked about a whole bunch of stuff that I don't really remember, but
Right.
I remember him talking about how many things he had to overcome to get to his destination. Now he's a designer for Gucci, but like literally at a point in his career, he was selling knockoff Gucci.
Right.
So it was like, so it was like just listening to someone define their purpose really changed my perspective, because it's like, hey, there's so much adversity in not only finding your purpose but defining it as well. So I do think perspective is a culmination of a lot of different things. So that's why you have to be intentional with the people you're around. You have to be intentional with what you consume. You need to be intentional with social media, like, being hypersensitive to toxic energy, like things like that. You really got to be aware of that kind of stuff.
It's funny, man. That's really good. And it's funny how, as we get ready to wrap this up, it's funny how it comes full circle, right? We're talking about how you have to learn how to deal with adversity, and that's what the initial post that I posted today was about. Like, you're going to go through some things in your journey, and you just have to understand that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember years ago seeing a sign that said life. It was a poster. It was one of those, like if you go in a counselor's office or something. It was a poster that said life is full of curves, right? And it showed this car driving off a cliff, right? It said life is full of curves.
Wait, what? You lost me. What?
it said life is full of curves as long as you don't keep going straight. You'll be fine as long as you don't keep going straight. And just understanding in your journey, whatever it is, right? Whatever your profession is, whatever your school is, whatever you're trying to accomplish, you have to understand that life is going to give you those bumps. It's part of it. Like, you're not special enough, right? You're not special enough to where it's gonna, you go through something and it doesn't affect you, right? You have something happen and, man, I lost, it's over, let me change direction. No, you don't change directions, you just readjust your azimuth. Right? You readjust your
azimuth. That's a word I haven't heard in a long time.
Right? You readjust your azimuth and you say, okay, that didn't work. But I learned something. What you learn? That didn't work.
Right. So, I know what not to do.
Right. I know what not to do. And I think if people step back and kind of take that perspective, right, you'll find a lot more success. It's just one of the things I find in today's generation, whether I'm coaching them or teaching them or mentoring them, is we want instant gratification.
Yes.
We want instant success. We want it to happen now.
You know why?
Why?
I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but I'm going to just scratch it. Capitalism. Like, when you sell the dream, people buy into. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. People buy into the dream. So okay. If I want to do this, I got to do that. If I want to do this, so they sell dreams to people. And what sucks is, like, they have more access to people because of social media and the internet and TV. Like, the influence, the ability to influence someone on a dream is so much easier now. But in the words of Dr. Cornel West, it's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. So,
right. And nothing happens when you sleep. Hey,
that's the perfect way to wrap that up.
Right. Nothing happens when you sleep. So, again, right. This is going to end episode 2. Ashley, again, you did an amazing job. I appreciate you being on here.
I'm just a reflection. I'm just a reflection.
All right. So again, hey guys, thanks for joining us. If you have any topics that you'd like to discuss or like to hear for us to talk about, please message personal message, send a DM, whatever you can do, text message, call, let us know what you'd like to hear. Other than that, we'll end this episode. Y'all have a great evening.
Bye.